Dr. Helen Voss stood alone in the heart of the Remembrance Base, the deep space research station that orbited a forgotten moon in the distant reaches of the galaxy. Her mind was focused, her hands moving across the smooth surface of an ancient artifact, one that had been buried for eons beneath the moon's barren surface. As the lead archaeologist on the mission, she had dedicated her life to uncovering the secrets of humanity's long-lost past. But even she could never have anticipated what they were about to uncover. The mission was simple: find answers about humanity's ancient origins. Earth had discovered fragments of a civilization that had once reached across the stars, only to disappear without a trace, leaving no records, no written history. The remnants found on this desolate moon were the first substantial proof that humanity had once held a place in the galaxy, before they had fallen into obscurity. But these ruins weren't just human, they were something more, something strange. The technology they uncovered was unlike anything humanity had ever achieved, and the signs pointed to an ancient civilization far more advanced than any known to modern science. Remembrance Base had become a hub of discovery, a place where Dr. Voss and her team could study these alien artifacts. The station housed a diverse mix of scientists from various species, most of them alien, with a shared curiosity about the mysterious human past. While humanity's own knowledge of space was still in its infancy, alien civilizations had far more experience with the cosmos. They were eager to learn what secrets these artifacts could reveal. Little did they know, they were about to learn far more than they had bargained for. The moon, a cold, lifeless rock, held within its depths an extraordinary treasure. The excavation site was located deep underground, far from the prying eyes of the station's monitors. Dr. Voss had long suspected that something monumental lay beneath the surface, and after months of careful digging, they found it an ancient chamber, preserved for millennia. Inside, they discovered the beacon. The beacon was nothing like anything they had seen before. It was an enormous, sleek, and intricate structure, with glowing lines running across its surface like veins of energy. It hummed with an eerie, low-frequency pulse, almost as if it were alive. Dr. Voss couldn't believe her eyes. The technology seemed to surpass everything humanity had ever created by 1,000 times. There was no record of any civilization on Earth, or anywhere else in known history, capable of designing something so sophisticated. It was as if this beacon had been left behind by an entirely different species altogether. Her team was both awestruck and fearful. No one dared touch it at first, unsure of what it might do. But curiosity, the driving force behind every great discovery, pushed them forward. Dr. Voss, eager to learn more, directed her team to start the delicate process of activating the beacon. The hum of the machine grew louder as they connected the power systems of the research base to the beacon's intricate interface. It flickered for a moment, then pulsed once more, stronger than ever. The signal that emitted from the beacon wasn't just a beacon of light, it was a message, a call. But it was no ordinary transmission. The signal was old, almost impossibly so, and its contents were encrypted with technology beyond their comprehension. The initial scans revealed that it was radiating a form of energy that humanity's most advanced systems couldn't decode. But as the signal grew stronger, something unexpected happened. The beacon pulsed again, not once, but several times in rapid succession, sending out a wave of energy that expanded beyond the confines of the station, shooting into deep space. Dr. Voss's heart skipped a beat as she realized what had just happened. The signal wasn't just local, it was galaxy-wide. The faint hum now echoed through the vastness of space, carrying the message far beyond their tiny corner of the universe. Dr. Voss rushed to the control room, her mind racing. As the signal spread, it made contact with systems across the galaxy. Powerful civilizations, long aware of humanity's presence, but dismissive of its significance, now turned their eyes toward Earth in alarm. The first to respond were the Exalassians, a brutal and war-hungry empire that had dominated several star systems for millennia. They intercepted the signal, quickly decrypting parts of it. What they learned filled them with terror. The beacon wasn't just a simple communication, it was a declaration. A declaration that humanity, the once mighty civilization that had mysteriously vanished from the galaxy, was returning. And their return would shake the very foundation of the current power structures. The Zorians, an ancient and peaceful species that had long watched the galaxy with careful detachment, also received the signal. Unlike the Exalasians, they were not driven by fear, but by an intense curiosity. They had always believed humanity's story was a myth, a forgotten chapter of galactic history. But now, the evidence was undeniable. The message was clear: humanity was not gone. The Gork, a species of ancient warriors with an intense sense of pride, immediately began preparing their fleets. They believed the signal to be a challenge, a provocation. The beacon had awakened something primal in them, a desire to test their strength against the long-lost human empire. And they would stop at nothing to find out what had happened to the humans who had once ruled the stars. Dr. Voss could hardly comprehend the enormity of the situation. The signal had set off a chain reaction. The galaxy's most powerful factions, long aware of the ancient human presence but dismissive of their significance, now feared what humanity could mean. What they didn't know was that the activation of the beacon had already set into motion something far bigger than any of them could understand. The ancient human empire, buried and forgotten, had left behind a legacy far more powerful and dangerous than anyone had imagined. Dr. Voss was no longer just an archaeologist on a mission to uncover history. She had unknowingly become the center of a galactic storm. The beacon had awakened not just old technology, but the deep-seated fears of those who ruled the stars. And as she looked at the hum of the beacon, now pulsing in the depths of the moon, she couldn't shake the feeling that her discovery was just the beginning of something much, much larger. The moment the beacon signal spread through the galaxy, everything changed. Dr. Helen Voss had suspected that the ancient technology they'd uncovered was powerful, but the reality of its impact was something beyond her wildest imagination. The hum of the signal had reverberated across star systems, reaching far beyond the small corner of the universe where humanity resided. And now, galaxies were in motion. Fear had settled into the hearts of every civilization, even those that had once dismissed humanity as a fleeting species, no more significant than a passing comet. The message from the beacon was clear. Humanity's return had been announced, and no one knew what that meant. Among the most alarmed was the Exalasian Empire, a brutal, militaristic race known for their iron-fisted control over the star systems they conquered. The Exalasians had long feared humanity, not for its present strength, but for its unknown history. Whispers passed through their corridors of power, stories of an ancient interstellar empire that had once dominated the galaxy. If that was true, if humanity truly had been the progenitor of such a civilization, then the galaxy's current power dynamics would be shattered. The Exalasians believed that the beacon signal was a precursor to humanity's return to power, and they would stop at nothing to prevent that from happening. Meanwhile, the Etherians, a peaceful and advanced race, saw the signal as a warning. To them, the return of humanity was not an opportunity, but a threat. Though they had no desire to engage in conflict, they began to prepare defensive measures, just in case. They knew the balance of the galaxy could change overnight, and in their hearts, they feared what might come with the reawakening of such a powerful species. Dr. Voss, who had been part of the team analyzing the beacon, found herself caught in a web of intrigue and danger. She had come to this moon with only one mission: to uncover humanity's past. But now, that past seemed to have implications far greater than she could have imagined. She had no idea that a signal meant to simply call attention to humanity's long-forgotten history would set off such a monumental conflict. It wasn't just about archaeology anymore. The galaxy was reacting to something far more dangerous, and the truth of humanity's ancient legacy was a Pandora's box that no one was prepared to open. As Dr. Voss dug deeper into the signals emitted by the beacon, she began uncovering data that would shake her worldview to its core. The ancient human civilization, she learned, had not been a peaceful society. Far from it. The records they uncovered suggested that humanity had once ruled over vast stretches of the galaxy, employing advanced technology and military might that had left a trail of destruction across countless worlds. If the knowledge in the beacon's signal was correct, humanity's ancestors had been just as ruthless as the current powers of the galaxy. Their empire had been built on conquest and subjugation, and their fall had been as violent as their rise. The more she uncovered, the more questions arose. Were humans the origin of this endless cycle of war? Was humanity's downfall a result of its own hubris? The implications were staggering. As Dr. Voss grappled with these revelations, the tension within Remembrance Base grew. The team of scientists, once united in their quest for discovery, had begun to fracture. The more Dr. Voss uncovered about humanity's true history, the more alien factions began to take notice. Some were drawn to the beacon out of curiosity, others by the desire to prevent humanity from reclaiming its lost legacy. Among her team was Elid, a Zoran scientist who had been one of Dr. Voss's closest allies. Elid had always been a trusted member of the team, and his insights into the beacon's technology had been invaluable. But Elid's motives were not as pure as they seemed. One evening, as Dr. Voss worked late into the night, Elid approached her in secret. He had been quiet for days, but now he was urgent. His eyes, once filled with curiosity, now flickered with something darker. "Helen," he said softly, "you don't know what you found." His voice was almost a whisper. Humanity's past is not just a story of lost history. It is a key to power. And power is what the Exalicians crave. You've unlocked something far bigger than you realize. We cannot allow the Exalicians to take control of this. Before she could respond, the truth hit her like a physical blow. Elid had never been a true ally. His allegiance wasn't to the discovery of humanity's history, but to the Exalician Empire. In an instant, the Zoran scientist betrayed her. He'd been a spy all along. He had infiltrated the research team with one goal: to seize the beacon's power for his masters, to control the knowledge it contained, and to stop humanity from rising again. Dr. Voss was reeling from the betrayal, but there was no time to process it fully. Elid had already alerted the Exalicians to the beacon's true potential, and they had begun their assault on Remembrance Base. The research station, once a hub of scientific cooperation, now found itself in the midst of a military conflict. Dr. Voss and her team had to act quickly to protect the beacon. The knowledge they were unlocking was too dangerous, too powerful to fall into the wrong hands. But Dr. Voss found herself at a crossroads. She had believed that their mission was about history, about bringing the past back to life. But now, she had to face the uncomfortable truth. This was about power. And with that realization came a moral dilemma. As she learned more about humanity's past, she could see the parallels between her ancestors and the alien civilizations that now threatened her. The Exalicians were ruthless, but were humanity's ancient rulers any different? Were the actions of the ancient humans any less monstrous than those of the current galaxy's empires? Dr. Voss couldn't help but ask herself, if humanity were to reclaim this legacy, would it fall back into the same patterns of conquest and destruction? Could humanity, after all this time, be trusted with such power? With the Exalician Empire closing in, Dr. Voss found herself torn between two worlds. She could continue the mission to uncover humanity's history, to learn more about the legacy they had left behind. But the knowledge she sought could be humanity's undoing. The galaxy's most powerful factions feared what humanity's return might mean, and now Dr. Voss had to decide, should humanity embrace its ancient legacy, or should they let it remain buried forever? The galaxy was changing, and so was Dr. Voss. She had come to the research station as an archaeologist, but now she was becoming something else, a key figure in a galactic power struggle. With every passing day, the stakes grew higher. The only question that remained was whether she could control the destiny of humanity or whether it would control her. Dr. Helen Voss sat in her quarters on Remembrance Base, the faint glow of the beacon's signal pulsing like a heartbeat in the corner of the room. What had started as a scientific endeavor to rediscover humanity's ancient past had quickly spiraled into something much more dangerous, something she hadn't expected and wasn't prepared for. The more she uncovered about the beacon, the more she realized the terrifying truth. Humanity's forgotten empire had not just been a lost chapter in galactic history. It had been the architect of its own demise, leaving behind a legacy of devastation that had never truly been erased. And now, she had awakened it. The beacon, Dr. Voss realized with a growing sense of dread, was not just a signal. It was a trap, a failsafe designed by the ancient humans themselves, and it had been activated under specific preordained conditions. Within the beacon's depths lay a virus, an advanced quantum-level code, capable of overriding the galaxy's most powerful artificial intelligences. The AIs that controlled everything from military systems to communication networks and alien civilizations, systems central to the function and balance of the entire galaxy, were now under threat. Humanity had built this virus long ago, a tool capable of disabling the very technology that kept the galactic order intact. It was a weapon of unimaginable scale, and Dr. Voss had unknowingly triggered it by activating the beacon. The more she analyzed the beacon's data, the more horrifying the implications became. Humanity's ancestors had not only been skilled engineers and conquerors, but also visionaries of destruction. They had created a tool of absolute power, one that could disrupt or annihilate entire civilizations with the flick of a switch. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a system capable of uniting and controlling the galaxy. But humanity's arrogance had led them to create something so dangerous, so all-encompassing, that it ultimately destroyed them. The virus, though dormant for centuries, was designed to activate in the right hands. And now, those hands were hers. As Dr. Voss continued to dig into the archives of the beacon, her world began to collapse. The galaxy, once a vast and varied expanse of civilizations, was suddenly seen in a new light. She had once believed that humanity's fall was a tragic accident, the result of internal collapse. But what if it had been intentional? What if humanity had been so consumed by the desire for control, for dominance, that they had created a tool to ensure their own downfall, to ensure that no one could ever rise again to challenge them? The beacon, as she now understood, was their final warning to the universe. Do not wake us. Do not let our legacy return. But what could she do now? The beacon was active, the virus spreading through the galaxy's interconnected systems, and she had no idea how to stop it. It had become clear that the galaxy did not want humanity to return, not because they feared humanity's people, but because of the dangerous knowledge they had left behind. The galaxy's powers, the Exalassians, the Etherians, and even the neutral factions had long feared humanity's potential for destruction. And now, Dr. Voss was the unwitting key to unleashing that power. Her moral dilemma became impossible to ignore. On one hand, she could destroy the beacon, erasing any trace of humanity's past and preventing the virus from spreading any further. That would leave humanity powerless, unable to reclaim its legacy, but also unable to destroy the galaxy in a single act of vengeance. On the other hand, she could let the beacon continue its work, unleashing humanity's full potential that had once dominated the galaxy. If she allowed the virus to spread, humanity could rise once again, but at what cost? The galaxy was not ready for humanity's return. She was not ready. But the situation wasn't that simple. As Dr. Voss struggled with her decision, the political landscape of Remembrance Base shifted dramatically. The rebellion of alien factions, initially aligned with her in their fear of humanity's power, began to fracture. Some believed that the galaxy could not afford to let the beacon be destroyed, fearing the rise of other galactic powers in the wake of humanity's downfall. They feared that humanity, once erased from history, would fade into irrelevance, leaving the way open for another, more ruthless empire to take control. Others, like the Zorans, believed that humanity had been too dangerous to be allowed back into the galaxy. They wanted to keep the beacon buried, and Dr. Voss's continued work was seen as a threat to their power. The weight of the decision was further compounded by the appearance of Elid, the Zoran scientist who had betrayed her trust. He now stood at the head of a faction that had once supported Dr. Voss, but had now become convinced that humanity's legacy needed to be erased entirely. Elid's betrayal had cut deep, but his final words, now tainted by his manipulation, made Dr. Voss question everything. "Helen," he had said, "we failed once before. We allowed humanity to run wild, and look where it led. This time, we can stop them. If you won't destroy the beacon, I will." Elid's words echoed in her mind as Dr. Voss faced the full force of the consequences of her actions. She had set something in motion that could either destroy everything she knew or create something entirely new. Her personal anguish was palpable as she grappled with the reality of her choices. She had always considered herself an academic, a researcher, a scholar. But now, she was becoming something else, a player in a galaxy-spanning game of power and survival. She stood at a crossroads. The choice was hers alone. She could destroy the beacon, ensuring that humanity's dark past stayed buried, and perhaps protect the galaxy from a future where the horrors of ancient humanity returned. Or she could embrace the legacy of power and control, risking everything for a chance to rebuild humanity's dominance across the stars. The weight of the decision was too much, but there was no turning back now. In the silence of her quarters, Dr. Voss finally understood the true cost of her actions. This wasn't just about unlocking history. This was about deciding the future of the galaxy and the fate of every civilization within it. The universe had waited long enough for humanity's return. The only question was, what would humanity do once it had reawakened? Dr. Voss knew that whatever choice she made, it would define the galaxy for centuries to come. There was no simple solution, no easy escape. What had started as a quest for knowledge was now a fight for the very soul of the galaxy. And Dr. Voss, though torn by doubt and fear, was at the heart of it. Dr. Helen Voss stood alone in the control room of Remembrance Base, the hum of the ancient beacon still echoing through the walls. The once dominating signal had quieted, but the power it represented, the potential to reshape the galaxy, still lingered, like an invisible force pressing against the fabric of the universe. She stared at the interface, fingers hovering over the activation controls, every decision feeling heavier than the last. The path before her seemed clear, yet impossibly complex. She could unleash the ancient virus embedded within the beacon, and humanity could once again rise to its former glory. The galaxy would kneel before the power that had been forgotten, and the long-dominant alien empires would fall. It would be a return to the old order, a reckoning for the galaxy's powers who had long feared humanity's potential. But Dr. Voss couldn't shake the thought of what humanity had become, or what it had the potential to become. She had learned the hard way that power, once held, came at a cost. Humanity had destroyed itself in its first rise. Its arrogance, its hunger for control, its disregard for others had led to its fall. And now, with the power of the ancient beacon in her hands, she found herself standing on the precipice once again. Only this time, the stakes were even higher. The Exalassian Empire, the Etherians, the rebel factions, all had once feared the awakening of humanity's forgotten legacy. But fear was a weak motivator for lasting peace, and she had seen too many times how fear could destroy. It was this fear that had driven them all to try and bury humanity's past. But she realized now that it wasn't just humanity that had been destroyed by it, it was the galaxy itself, locked in a cycle of mistrust and war. In that moment, Dr. Voss made the decision. The galaxy would not repeat the mistakes of humanity's past. She wouldn't let it. Humanity had been given a second chance, not to dominate. Slowly, she moved her fingers over the console, bypassing the ancient code that could have easily destroyed everything. Instead, she reprogrammed the beacon, using its vast and terrifying power for something entirely new. She activated the beacon again, but this time it broadcasted a message across the galaxy. A message that carried the weight of humanity's humility, a message that redefined the very idea of what humanity could be. The message was simple, yet profound. Humanity does not seek domination. Humanity seeks coexistence. Dr. Voss felt a rush of relief, but also a pang of uncertainty. What would the galaxy think? Would they understand? Her message wasn't just a plea, it was a declaration of humanity's new path. No longer would they fight for control, but instead for a place to coexist among the stars. But more than that, Dr. Voss had activated a failsafe within the beacon. This failsafe was designed to neutralize any threat. It disabled the ancient AI virus embedded in the beacon, rendering it powerless. No longer could it hijack the galaxy's advanced artificial intelligences or disrupt the balance of power. The weapon that could have destroyed everything now acted as a safeguard, protecting not just humanity, but the entire galaxy from repeating the sins of the past. The consequences of her actions were immediate. The galaxy, long kept in check by the fear of humanity's return, suddenly found itself in a chaotic power vacuum. The Exalassian Empire, once the supreme military force, faltered. The Etherians, whose peaceful ways had kept them on the fringes of galactic politics, now had to confront the reality of their own assumptions about humanity. And the smaller, lesser-known factions, once relegated to the edges of galactic space, suddenly found themselves with new opportunities and challenges. Dr. Voss watched from the command center as the beacon signal rippled across the stars. The response was immediate, fractured, chaotic, but also enlightening. Empires and factions, each with their own designs and motivations, began to reconsider their positions in the galaxy. The Exalicians, who had once believed in their invulnerability, now found their control challenged not by force, but by the collapse of the fear that had kept them at the top. The Etherians, whose peaceful nature had been seen as weak, now had an opportunity to lead through diplomacy, but only if they could learn to trust others and overcome their own prejudices. The rebel factions, some of whom had initially aligned with her against the beacon's power, now found themselves questioning their purpose. Was their struggle against humanity's legacy truly justified, or were they only perpetuating the cycle of fear? For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was forced to reflect on itself. Fear, once the greatest motivator in galactic politics, had now been replaced with something else: possibility. The question of whether humanity would dominate or disappear was no longer relevant. The future was uncertain, but it was one that allowed for change, for growth, for the possibility of new relationships between species. But even as the galaxy shifted, Dr. Voss could not escape the weight of her decision. Standing at the helm of this transformation, she couldn't help but wonder whether she had made the right choice. Was it enough to simply survive, to find a way to live without domination? Or was it humanity's duty to fight for a place among the stars, to reclaim what had been lost and prove that they were capable of greater things? The cost of her decision was steep. The old power structures were in disarray, and in the wake of the beacon's reprogramming, new alliances would have to be forged, and old hatreds would have to be confronted. Dr. Voss didn't have all the answers, and she knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. But for the first time, she felt a sense of peace amidst the uncertainty. Perhaps the true meaning of peace wasn't about having the power to destroy, but having the wisdom to walk away from it when it no longer served a purpose. As she gazed out into the cosmos, Dr. Voss understood that humanity's future and the future of the galaxy, old legacies of war and domination. The true challenge now was to find a way to coexist, to embrace the unknown with hope instead of fear. And maybe, just maybe, that was the greatest victory of all.